One thing we tend to talk about when it comes to long-lasting game franchises is their legacy. Castle Wolfenstein and Doom laid the groundwork for the entire FPS genre. Resident Evil gave us the term survival horror, while also making the genre a titan in its own right. In the advent of the new millennium, games like Half-Life emerged and not only introduced legitimate storylines for first-person shooter games, but also pioneered the idea of an unbroken cinematic experience. Franchises like the Elder Scrolls and Fallout series got the Western audience caught up in the roleplay RPG lifestyle, and series like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest introduced the globe to JRPGs. Metal Gear Solid and Thief introduced the stealth element in third and first person respectively. And these games shook and reshaped the foundation of the video game industry as and when they released. Whether it was through gameplay innovation or new mechanics in playing the games, or how we perceive narrative in video games and can now liken them to something like television or movies. Releasing June 23rd, 2000, 22 years ago to the day, the original Deus Ex was met with nothing but praise and adoration from gamers and critics alike. It was a first-person RPG with an emphasis on its narrative and how player choice wasn't just valued, it was actually used to shape and sculpt certain aspects of the story. If a player wanted to be democratic, pacifistic or stealthy, that was all valid, with things implemented to allow for those playstyles, either in combination with each other or individually. Conversely, if you woke up and chose violence that morning, you can bet your sweet bippy there are several options on how to dispatch any fool who was given up on life and chose to stand in your path. Deus Ex was a behemoth of a title and the progenitor of the highly acclaimed Deus Ex series, with its follow-up Human Revolution and its spin-off The Fall, and Deus Ex Mankind Divided.
No, we missed one.
What do you mean we missed one?
Yeah, there's one in between.
I don't think...
Definitely, yeah,
No.
there f***ing is.
I don't...
No,
I don't...
listen.
What?
There is. I'm f***ing 100% there is.
No, there's 100% not.
Invisible War.
Oh,
Nah, they ain't gonna cut it.
And this leads us up to today's topic of Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Oh, my head. Released on the 23rd of August 2016, Deus Ex Mankind Divided was actually welcomed quite warmly by fans and critics. Although it should be mentioned that in the lead up to the game's release, Deus Ex Mankind Divided stirred up quite a bit of controversy. Kicking things off, Square Enix introduced a 5-tier pre-order system, where depending on how much money you spent, you could pick and choose one item from each of the 5 tiers. This was blatantly to incentivize people to spend as much money as they can to get their hands on some menial smaller items. But Square Enix would argue that this was some sort of meta way for players to choose what they got in their pre-order bonus rather than letting developers decide for you. But seemingly wanting to outdo themselves, Eidosmontreal decided to use some pretty heavy-handed language in their promotional and live marketing material, with one of the main offenders being their flippant use of the word apartheid to describe some of the plot elements in Deus Ex Mankind Divided. And while some could argue that this was a relevant term to use, it seemed kind of disrespectful and off the cuff to just use it like this. Now, I'm not gonna go into real world history in regards to apartheid, and I'm definitely not trying to undermine what happened during the events of this atrocity, but I can see and understand why people would be very upset at these terms being used seemingly so flippantly in regards to a video game. Apartheid saw a lot of people dead. It saw a lot of racism and segregation of classes and races in South Africa. And while yes, you can draw some parallels between how augmented people are treated in Deus Ex to how black people were treated in South Africa, realistically, they don't come anywhere near close enough to each other to justify the use, in my opinion. And this extends to some of the promotional and marketing material they used as well, with posters which bared the slogan "Aug Lives Matter." And as you may expect, the Black Lives Matter movement didn't take this too well. As again, like apartheid, Eidosmontreal are trying to compare events in a video game to a real world struggle that has been going on for years now to improve the lives of black people and to protest the use of police brutality and any forms of violence against black people. I don't believe Eidosmontreal done this maliciously or with any intention of upsetting or aggravating any specific groups in relation to the content of Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I just think they could have handled it a little bit better, as it seems like they didn't think too far ahead or really consult anyone when it came to the use of these words, especially with real life marketing material as well. So for the first time in a long time, I'm going to actually be putting a spoiler warning up, because I will be going over the entire events of Deus Ex Mankind Divided, as well as some of the events from Deus Ex Human Revolution. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the story, then this is your one and only warning. Deus Ex Mankind Divided is the sequel and continuation of the Human Revolution story. Once again, we play as Adam Jensen, a Detroit SWAT member turned head of security for Sarif Industries, now working for Interpol as a special agent, all while being a double agent for the Juggernaut Collective, a group of hacktivists looking to expose and ultimately take down the Illuminati. Deus Ex Mankind Divided, like every other entry previously in the series, offers a lot of player choice either through the gameplay and playstyle they choose, and how their actions will affect the story. For my playthrough, I chose a mostly non-lethal playthrough and tried to stealth as best I could, all while opting to take the democratic route and talk my way out of any situations whenever possible. So when it comes to the discussion of the story and certain aspects, my wording should reflect the choices I've made and may differ from ones you will have or may have had in your playthroughs. Set in the year 2029, just 2 short years after the Aug incident at the end of Human Revolution, we see Adam Jensen in the back of a VTOL being debriefed by his boss Jim Miller while en route to a mission in an abandoned resort in Dubai. This scene is an almost perfect recreation of an early scene in Human Revolutions. But instead of Adam being debriefed by David Sarif, he's instead being debriefed by Jim Miller. And instead of being flown to a Detroit-based factory, we're being flown to a Dubai-based abandoned resort. A lot of people may call this lazy, but I think this is a good way to reintroduce returning players from Human Revolution in a more gentle sort of approach. It's here we are then given the choice between lethal and non-lethal weaponry, and then either close range or long range combat. I chose the stun gun because, as Adam puts it,
"Never was one to play the odds. Give me something I can use up close."
Adam goes boss mode out the gate by diving head first out of the back of the VTOL mid-flight, only to catch himself last minute with his Icarus landing org. And it's from here we get our first taste of gameplay through a sequence of optional tutorials going over the new control scheme Mankind Divided introduces. Adam sneaks his way through the resort, reaching his vantage point to overlook an illegal arms deal. The deal is ambushed by a mysterious group in gold masks who are heavily armed and heavily augmented. Adam takes advantage of the ensuing combat by sneaking around the now active battlefield, making his way to the arms dealer's helicopter to disable it before it can fly off. It's here that a sandstorm overtakes the resort, causing more damage and sends an industrial crane through the walls of the resort. We fade to black before we see what happens, and we see a cutscene of the Illuminati conspiring as they are wont to do. Before long, we're back with Adam, who has been rudely awoken by a tannoy announcement that they are finally arriving in Prague, indicating either a leap forward in time or that Adam was reminiscing or dreaming in a flashback style sequence. After getting off the train, we bump into Alex Vega, or really someone else bumps into her, essentially gives her the middle finger and walks off, and we help her pick up her books. We are now standing in Ruzicka station and get to witness firsthand how augmented people are treated now after the Aug incident. There are separate lines for the augmented to go through where they have to go through rigorous scans and checks. Even the trains and the metros have carriages specifically for augmented people, so naturals, as they call them, don't have to interact with them or see them. The police can stop anyone with an aug at any time for an invasive security check, where if they don't find anything wrong with your paperwork, they can then choose to go through your luggage and personal belongings. And if they find one single thing out of place, they will happily take that opportunity to ship off any augmented people to Golem City. In this opening scene, where we see the segregation and separation of the different peoples, how augmented people are seen as less than human, not even second class. Where they get their passports and security paperwork checked and scanned is penned off with wire fencing and barbed wire. There's open racism as well, with terms like Hansa and Clank being thrown around. And this is where I think Eidosmontreal were going to try and justify the usage of terms like segregation and apartheid. And again, I'm not going to sit here and try and defend the use of these words considering the hefty connotations that come with these words, but at the very least you can see what they were trying to do here, with Prague almost being reminiscent of wartime Berlin back during the Nazi regime. Security checks, secret police, subterfuge, cloak and dagger tactics, just to get around and function in the city if you are not part of the preferred biology. After discussing their goals and plans and who sent Adam's team to Dubai, an explosion can be heard. Adam turns and his AR augment picks up several bomb threats just moments before they detonate, destroying Ruzicka station. This leads to one of the heaviest scenes I have seen in the series so far, as Adam and Alex are stumbling through the wreckage and remains of the station, only to hear a child cry out because his mother has been trapped and crushed under rubble. Adam tries to help the woman out, and as she grabs her hand, the life slips from her and drops out. As Adam stands up, and in a really well done moment for Adam's character, instead of showing emotion or the potential of tears in his eyes, covers himself with his sunglasses. This adds that really personal feeling of wanting to get justice and revenge for what's just happened here, by making us witness something so visceral and emotionally charged. One detail in this scene I really like though, is the fact that you can actually see the bomber leaving the scene. If you watched any of the trailers or marketing material for Deus Ex Mankind Divided, you may have seen this man in a yellow hoodie from time to time. In fact, there was one trailer where Adam is actively chasing this guy down a street, trying to catch him, before again we see a detonation of explosives. After the station bombing, we then cut to Adam Jensen waking up in the bed of his apartment, with his orgs acting up after suffering damage in the blasts. After briefly talking to David Saraf, who left him a voicemail on his TV, Adam gets dressed and coats up and heads out to find his personal and definitely mostly above board mechanic, Václav Koller. Interesting fact about Václav, the direct English translation of his name actually is Wenceslas, like that good king in that one Christmas Carol. What does that have to do with anything? Hell if I know. Koller starts his repairs on Adam, putting him to sleep, where once again we are shown a cutscene of him waking up, but this time being told he almost died due to something inside him siphoning a huge amount of power. Here, Adam discovers the fact that secret experimental augmentations have been hidden inside his body, but they aren't Sarif brand. Adam is instructed on how to use these mods through the action of deactivating orgs he doesn't use to maintain power consumption so he doesn't overheat and risk permanent damage. We are also told of an item that completely nullifies the overheating risk, but that's an optional item that comes up later on in the game. After being reset, Adam finds himself outside of a shipping company called Praha, which is the front to the secret underground HQ of Interpol's Task Force 29. After some corporate espionage and installing a whisper chip into some kind of motherboard, Adam once again meets with Miller, who assigns Adam with chasing down the bomber of Ruzicka Station, and then is instructed to start our investigation in the terror attack by heading back to Ruzicka Station to grab some evidence for a lab tech called Smiley. We'll come back to the story a little bit later on, but let's get into the gameplay for now. Unlike Human Revolution, which had Detroit and Hong Kong as its hub areas, Mankind Divided only has the streets of Prague. But in doing this, Eidosmontreal have made an immersive, fleshed out and lived in city, rich in side missions, NPCs and legitimate businesses instead of just shady black market dealers. The actual missions you go on also feel a lot more filled in and thought out, and offer up an opportunity to see some absolutely gorgeous set pieces, such as the sunset at the end of Gollum City, the hauntingly beautiful sand-swept desert jewel in Dubai, and the cold glacial industrial Garm complex in the Swedish Alps. Each area feels distinct and handcrafted in a way that naturally allows players of all different playstyles to navigate, whether you're ducking and dodging through vents and shadows or pushing cover to cover in a balls to the wall gunfight. One of my favourite things in the Deus Ex universe are the augmentations and cybernetic prosthesis that Adam Jensen and JC Denton can apply to themselves, as these are another layer of customizable options the player gets to benefit from and optimize their own playstyles. And much like the use of violence or the use of your words, augmentations are, for the most part, entirely optional. I mean, sure, you could take a stealthy loadout with invisibility, silent movement, and multiple enemy takedowns, or you can take a more aggressive approach with the Titan Aug, reload speed reduction, recoil reduction, just all out optimize your combat efficiency. But with the overall Deus Ex series, one of its main themes is the struggle of what it means to be human. How much machine do you attach before you're no longer man? And Deus Ex Mankind Divided makes this question even more volatile, as we are now witnessing the consequences of the Aug incident from 2027. But this also acts as another layer of player choice. Has Adam Jensen embraced his augmentations and accepted that grey area between man and machine and is squeezing every last bit of efficiency out of every single biocell? Or has he woke up resentful, hating what he's become, which, of course,
I never asked for this,
and just not used any augmentations that aren't game critical? You can be whoever you want to be. You can rely on your augs or not. You can be violent or non-violent. You can choose to ignore those crying out for help, or you can be a beacon of hope for the downtrodden. And while, yes, we play as Adam Jensen, a named and voiced character, you can push your beliefs, your ideology, your political standpoints onto him, and then live in a world built on the consequences of the actions you chose. You have brain augmentations to help you hack and influence or manipulate others in conversation, eye augmentations that help you see through walls and reduce the effects of flash grenades, dermal armor, implanted rebreather, nanoblades, taser knuckles, landing mods, and a non-lethal PEPS cannon built into Adam's left arm. And that's just a small handful of the 28 augmentations under Jensen's hood. But it is worth mentioning again that until the third act of the story, you are limited to what augs you can have. You have to choose to either not use one of the new test augs or shut down one of your current augs instead. That is until you get the neuroplasticity calibrator, and the side mission for it in and of itself is actually one of the cooler side missions. Not because of the mission itself, But because on subsequent runs, if you want to be cheeky and net a time traveller achievement, you can head to the casino in the sewers of Prague and steal the calibrator ahead of time. Then, when you get to Collar and he mentions it, Adam just casually brings it out and blows Collar's obviously augmented mind, though you still have to wait until Act 3. Speaking of which... After gathering some blast data from the bombing site, Adam is sent to the Untitled complex, also known as Golem City, a ghetto and prison for the augmented. Any aug can be sent here for any reason, regardless if it was actually a crime or not. Small things like looking at a cop the wrong way, having an expired permit, or a coffee stain on your paperwork is more than enough for some of the corrupt cops to send any aug, man, woman or child packing to Golem City. Adam is tasked with tracking down and bringing in Talos Rucker, leader of ARC, the Augmented Rights Coalition, to question him on the Rizika bombings. On his travels, he has an interesting conversation with a walking industrial crane of a man called Viktor Marchenko before making it to Rucker's office. After talking Rucker into coming back to Prague with us with the help of a Casey Aug, Rucker is killed seemingly remotely via an unknown method, but not before letting Adam know he has evidence of who the real people behind the bombings are in a secret room. After gathering this and a harrowing escape, Adam makes his way back to Prague to discuss what he learned with Miller, who is not very happy about the news. Adam goes back to Smiley and learns that the bombs used a mechanical device to detonate, specifically one seen in a certain brand of wristwatches made by one Nomad Stanek. On his way to question Stanek, another bomb detonates, destroying Stanek's shop. This then prompts Adam to investigate Stanek's apartment, where he finds a bunch of bomb-making equipment and walks into a trap set by the local mafia's head, Radic Nikoladze. After escaping, Adam makes his way to the pub called the Irish Stool, as two Interpol agents have just informed him that they've managed to track Stanek down and have him held for questioning. During the questioning, Adam mentions finding the bomb-making equipment in Stanek's apartment, where Stanek then admits that he is the bomb maker, but Adam calls him out after deducing that it was actually the daughter making bombs and Stanek was just protecting her. Adam then leaves Stanek with the other agents for more questioning. Skipping forward slightly, later in the night, Adam finds himself with a difficult decision to make. Stanek has contacted Adam after escaping the agents and asked him to go and save his daughter, who is caught up in a cult and is about to do something that could get her killed. On the flip side, Adam is also contacted by Alex to tell him that her boss and leader of the hacktivists, Janus, has discovered that VersaLife, another major corporation in the Deus Ex universe, is about to clear out their accounts at the local Palisade Bank. This is to remove any and all evidence of a weapon that they are developing called the Orchid. And obviously, Adam and the Juggernaut Collective would have a very vested interest in discovering what this orchid is, considering it has ties to the Illuminati's plans. And while this is typically a hard decision to make, for this playthrough, from the start I knew I would be going the bank heist route. The compassionate side of me knows that Adam saving Stanek's daughter and stopping a cult from killing themselves in the name of a machine god is obviously the more morally correct thing to do here, but this is very much a one man on the track, five man on the track scenario. Do you kill one to save the lives of many, or do you kill many to save the lives of one? And in getting their hands on information on the Orchid, they actually stand to save a lot more lives than the 15 or so members of the cult. I know it sounds heartless, but at least for me, this is the more sensible option. Well, that, and if I'm being completely honest with you, the bank heist mission is probably one of the game's strongest missions, and it's infinitely more interesting and fun than stopping a cult member from killing themselves willingly. So after doing something that should literally be impossible considering the technology of the universe, Adam somehow manages to sneak through and into the corporate vault underneath the Palisade Bank. And arriving at the VersaLife vault, he plays a recording of his ex-girlfriend and Illuminati co-conspirator Megan Reed talking with another Illuminati member, Bob Page, about a facility called GARM. Megan also mentions that she is the one working on the orchid and that isn't very happy that the antidote for orchid is being kept at the same site as well. Janus locates the Garm facility and notes that it's ran by an ex-private military contractor known as Bell Tower. And with this information, Adam heads to the Swiss Alps to find out what Bell Tower has to do with anything. Once he gets there though, he is ambushed by the Gold Masks and Viktor Marchenko, who injects Adam with the orchid and leaves him for dead in the snowstorm. But Adam is quite literally built different. Due to a childhood of experimentation and genetic manipulation, Adam has unique DNA, which means his body doesn't rely on neuropozyne, a drug made to stop the body rejecting augmentations. This means that the orchid would not affect Adam Jensen the same way it would anyone else. As it turns out, the orchid is actually being developed by Megan to eliminate the neuropozyne dependency in augmented people and is using Adam's DNA as a basis. But in its developmental stages, it actually acts as a super lethal poison for augmented and non-augmented alike. It causes intense convulsions and seizures before hemorrhaging and shutting down vital organs. And if you are augmented, then your body goes into overdrive trying to push out the augmentations as your body rejects them from the system. And as was mentioned back in the Verse for Life safe, there is a neutralizing agent, which, if applied quick enough, can prevent death from the orchid. Coming back from the dead, Adam makes his way through the Garm facility in an attempt to escape and get back to Prague, while the Illuminati believes him dead. And arriving back in Prague, Adam finds out it has broken out into a riot, which has led to a curfew being implemented, arresting anyone who is out on the streets. Adam then has to sneak his way back to Collar if he has the calibrator, and then to Miller to inform him on what he found at Garm. Miller then orders Jensen to head to the Red Light District to investigate the local mafia called Diwali, and what connections they have to Marchenko and his plot. Adam finds out that the Diwali helped smuggle the orchid and other weapons to an expo centre in London, where Marchenko plans to use the orchid to kill a large amount of people in an attempt to push a bill that would see augmented people forcefully stripped of any and all augments. This is the plan of the Illuminati that we saw in the cutscene at the beginning of the game. This is to try and regain the control on the world that they lost when Hugh Darrow in Human Revolution and father of modern cybernetic augmentation caused the Aug incident. And to enact this plan, they are using Marchenko and his beliefs of everything going on in the world to puppeteer him to enacting their plans unbeknownst to him. Adam makes his way to London, where Miller and McCready set up teams ready to move in and take out Bell Tower once the Orchid and Marchenko are taken off the board. After stealthily taking out Bell Tower posing as security, Adam finds Miller injured in the Expo's kitchen, who informs Adam that the Orchid has been put into play and that bombs have been planted in surrounding buildings to kill off a large number of people in another attack set to frame augmented people as terrorists. And specific glasses of champagne have been spiked with orchid to kill off Nathaniel Brown, who is another in-universe billionaire and the only real threat to the Illuminati's plan on making sure that the human restoration bill doesn't go through. This means Adam is left with another difficult choice. Do you stop the bombing and save thousands of lives, but doom Nathaniel Brown to death, guaranteeing that the act passes, and stripping hundreds of thousands of augmented people of their rights and their prosthetics, which may be keeping them alive? Or do you save Brown, the bombs detonate, killing thousands of people in another terrorist attack, which is now believed to be done by augmented people? This also jeopardizes any chance the bill has of being revoked, and means the discrimination and spite against augmented people at large is just going to grow worse and worse, essentially dooming anyone with an augment to either be stripped and killed of them or face harassment and prejudice the rest of their lives. Or you can once again play cheeky bugger. If you are quick enough, you can take out Marchenko and stop the bombs, then via a secret passage sprint to the room Nathaniel Brown is in, stopping them from drinking the orchid champagne, saving them, and in turn giving the bill the best possible chance of passing, with no bombings or assassinations, putting the bill in a higher regard. And this is the overall route I took, as this is the one that falls more in line with the events of Deus Ex 1. Because, by the way, Human Revolution and Mankind Divided are actually prequels to the original Deus Ex game. Plus, there's another achievement in it. Deus Ex Mankind Divided is a genuinely brilliant game that boasts a lot when it comes to the choice of player customization, playstyle, and how the story is presented to you. But when compared to the original Deus Ex or Human Revolution, it's actually seen as the lesser title, and that is predominantly down to the presentation. A lot of fans believe that Square Enix rushed this game out and cut the story short intentionally so they could hit the summer window of 2016. In fact, here's footage of me sitting down to play this game for this review. Alright, let's play some Deus Ex. Good game. And if this is true, then it explains why the game feels shorter than it should, even with exploration and side quests sprinkled in. This game is only about 30 hours, which might sound like a decent amount of game, but considering the amount of plot points and threads that get left untied or unresolved, it's not enough. And even though Embracer Group has now bought Eidosmontreal, the future of the series is still up in the air. Human Revolution and Mankind Divided were the first two entries in what was meant to be a trilogy of new Deus Ex games, and we don't know if we're going to get that third part and the resolution of Adam Jensen's story. Gameplay, game feel, stealth mechanics, combat mechanics are all handled really well here, and I don't find myself complaining at all, as with every aspect of the game, I really enjoyed myself. In any situation you find yourself in, you are given the tools you need to make sure you can exit that situation however you see fit. If I get spotted, I feel like it's my fault because I wasn't watching patrol patterns closely enough, or I decided to go for the wrong bit of cover which exposed me. If I die in combat, it's because I didn't take cover well enough, or I underestimated the enemy forces approaching me with my own personal loadout. When I play this game casually, I usually save and reload if I'm ever spotted or accidentally kill someone. But in this playthrough, I tried not to do that, just to see what would happen when I find myself in those situations and how I would react in getting out of them. And I was genuinely surprised how versatile the toolkit you are given here is in regards to the situations you find yourself in. And yes, the story is on the shorter side with unresolved plot points, side quests and character art, but the locations you go through, the gameplay, the story you do get is all amazing, and you can tell it is meant to build up to this crescendo that was the third entry in this trilogy. And if we ever get that third entry and we get the resolution we were seeking, then I'm fairly sure fans that didn't like this game as much can look back on it and realise it really was one of the stronger entries in the series so far. And one thing I really love that I just brushed over briefly is this game's art style. It has this painterly feeling to it, especially with the close-up models that they actually bothered to animate. It feels like oil paintings come to life, especially with some of the backgrounds like the sunset, like the Alps. And it all fits into this neo-renaissance style everyone is dressed up in that the world has found itself in. And the best thing about the current two entries so far is Elias Tufexis' portrayal of Adam Jensen. That voice...
They're not going to be a problem for now. What do they want? You behind on your protection money?
Ooh. Chills every time. This video was a lot longer than what I usually make, so if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I promise my next review won't be as long, but it will be just as interesting. Now, if you watched the Q&A video, you might remember that I mentioned two potential games for this third video. One I haven't talked about before on the channel, and one I have. And for the next video, I've picked the one I have talked about before, because I spoke about it negatively the last time I talked about it. Now, I'm going to say this now, so there's no confusion when we get to that video. I don't believe the next game is the best in the series, but I do believe it is an underrated game. So please join me next time as we talk about Oh, well, that's not good.